Hello again, everyone. I wanted to share a new project that I'm working on related to fountain pens. For those of you that don't know, and I may not have mentioned this on the channel before, but Watership Down is my all-time favorite book. I have loved it since I was a kid. I still love it now that I'm an adult, and I've read it probably more times than I can count. But I love, love, love this book. And I have talked about how I do mixed media art sometimes, where I incorporate collage, and part of that is collaging words from books. And so I already have a couple of copies of this book. I have it in sort of a nicer hardback, and I have it in a nicer paperback. And I decided to get a cheaper version of this. I actually got this off of Etsy as a used copy for like $3 or something, because there's a lot of vintage sellers on Etsy. And I got it specifically so that I could use it for collage, so that I could use the pages in collage, because this book means a lot to me. I it's just an all-time favorite book, and it's part of why I was born in the year of the rabbit, so I kind of have an affinity with rabbits. And then I just really love the book. I mean, the book is so well written, and it's just a beautiful book. If you haven't read it, first off, I'm really, really jealous that you haven't read it yet, so now you can go and get it and read it. If I could read any book for the first time again, it would be this book. So, anyway, but so when I was going to use it for collage, what I was essentially going to do is just tear out all the pages and cut them up, and cut out passages, and incorporate them into some of my mixed media work. And I just couldn't get myself to start tearing out the pages. And I was, at the same time, I was thinking, well, I'd really like to use my fountain pens more, and try and make my handwriting a little better, and test out a bunch of my different fountain pens. So I had the crazy idea of copying down this entire book with fountain pens. So I have started. You can see I just have a little post-it marking where I am. So I'm not that far along, but it's been really, really wonderful, actually. I get to re-experience the book that I love, and as I'm writing passages from the book, I really am sort of absorbing the material even more than I would from just reading it normally. And I get to slow down with the book and the text and the characters, and it's really been quite delightful, actually. And because the chapters are fairly short in this book, what I've been doing is breaking it up by chapter. And each chapter I'll use a new pen and a new ink. So I'll go ahead and show you what I have. This is the pen that's next up, which is this Sailor Mini, Sailor Pro Gear Mini. I kind of wanted to see how it would feel for a longer writing session. And I haven't really written long passages of anything with any of my Sailor pens, so I kind of wanted to try that out. Actually, that's not true. I did write with one of my Sailor pens in here already, and it was lovely. But I'm figuring once I'm done copying down this book, then I'll feel like I've already gotten some use out of it, and I won't feel so bad about tearing out the pages. I mean, it's not a special edition or anything. I think it's from like the 90s. But and this is really, really silly, and this might have, I don't know, I have like a weird sensory thing with books. It took me a really long time to switch to the Kindle from regular paper books, just because I really love the tactile feel of books. And some of that might be my ASMR thing again, but it's the feel of the book and the smell of the book. See, I'm now sniffing my book. Like, especially older books that are musty and gross, of course, but there's something about the smell of paper in books that I just absolutely love. So it took me a really long time to switch to the Kindle. Eventually, what made me switch was that, oh, and I have a version of this on the Kindle too, by the way. That's how much I love this book. I have it in every media possible. I think I even have it on Audible now that I've switched to Audible for most things. But what ended up making me switch is that at the time, I was in the Bay Area, and I was commuting from Oakland to San Francisco, because we had just moved to Oakland from San Francisco. And I you never can sit down on BART. I don't if you don't know. So I was hanging onto the rail trying to read a book and that's just impossible. So the Kindle, it convinced me to go to the Kindle so that I could read a book one-handed on public transit. But now that I'm in Colorado, when I am commuting to work, which I'm not doing right now, I'm working from home still. When I am commuting to work, I drive. So that's kind of why I switched from books to the Kindle to now Audible. It's all about trying to get the most out of my commute time and enjoy some books while I'm doing that. So like I said, once I'm done copying this down, I'll feel a little bit better about tearing up this book, because when I was going through it, it's just like the smell was like bringing back memories of, I specifically remember when I was in 5th grade, we would get the book orders, and my family didn't have a lot of money, so we never really bought a lot of stuff. But I would always get at least one book when we had the book orders that would come in. And there would always be this distinctive smell in the classroom when the books came in and you could pick them up. And it just really reminds me of that. And I was a really avid reader as a little kid. And I would often lay in bed for hours reading a book, cuddling with my cat. And that was one of my favorite things to do as a kid. But anyway, I digress. What I'm going to do now is just do a quick flip through of the chapters that I've already finished and how I'm dealing with mistakes, which do happen. So, and I'm probably going to embellish this first page a little bit more. What I did was I used my Sailor Shikiori markers to go ahead and write out the title and the author. And I think that I had already teared out a page or two of this notebook. So this is a Cafe Notes A5, which is in this lovely A5 from Sojourner. And that was the other thing. I wanted to find a good use for this. Given the pace and the size of both this book and the number of pages in here and how many pages I've been going through, I don't think I'm going to be able to get the whole book in one notebook. So I may end up using like a notebook and a half, and then I have to kind of think. I don't think I have another Cafe Notes in A5, so I may get another one so that I can finish this book once it's really going. And so I still have quite a bit of this paper in here, but given the number of pages, like I said, and the number of pages here, and I'm doing more than one page per page, because I'll show you why as I go through here. So here's the table of contents, and I've reserved a few pages for that. And I just put the first section here. And again, I was just using the thinner side of those Shikiori markers, and I was trying to go through different colors and things. So I've left a few pages for that, and I didn't know if I wanted to write down which marker or which fountain pens and inks I was using for each section here, but I've since decided that I put that information after the individual chapter. So as you can see on the first page, I already made a little bit of a mistake. So basically, I just tried to kind of correct it visually. It's not perfect, but and if you've ever read the book, you know that there's all these little references to different stories and books at the beginning of each chapter. So I've put that in block lettering, and then the actual text of the book in cursive. And so I won't go through. And I might, and there's also a lot of footnotes in the book. So I've opted to just do the footnotes directly after where they appear in the book. I mean, here it was convenient because it happened to be sort of at the end. That lined up real perfectly. But I'll see if I can find another instance where I did that. Because if it appears in the middle, I'll just put the footnote in block lettering in the middle, which will the block lettering will kind of separate it out from the cursive writing. So like here's a mistake, and here I just chose to completely block out the word into sort of a rectangle-ish shape, and then put the right word on top. And sometimes I get ahead of myself and I think I know what the book says, and it actually says something different, or the way it's phrased is different than I think. So that's some of the reason why I end up making these mistakes. So I did that a couple more times here. And then what I did at the end here was I just put which pen it is. So I used the Sailor 1911 large with a hard medium nib, 21 karat. And then this is Robert Oster hot pink ink. So, and then the next chapter, I'm just going to flip really quickly through. And again, you know, here's another area where I had to cover up a mistake. This was a better day, obviously, although, and I'm not necessarily finishing each chapter all in one sitting. Sometimes I'll do, you know, just half of it or a quarter of it and then come back to it later. And then this is with the Pelican M400 with the extra fine nib, 14 karat nib, Organic Studios Oscar's Copper. So, and then here, this was a more shading ink. And of course, I made some mistakes at the end. And then this was my Pilot Custom 74, and that's with Robert Oster Viola ink. I just realized you probably had that first part cut off at the top. I apologize about that. So, and then this is the next section, and this was with an extra fine TWSBI nib, TWSBI 580, and I didn't really like writing with this nib all that much. I mean, it was fine. It wasn't unenjoyable, but it wasn't as enjoyable as, say, these other two before it. But I actually like the look of this better because it's a little bit more legible with the smaller lines. So I don't know. I mean, that's something that I learned, I suppose. And of course, here, you know, I probably was writing for too long and then ended up getting tired and try to jump ahead. So this is the Organic Studios Aldous Huxley. So it should have a little bit of sheen to it. Yeah, you can see it a little bit in the camera there. The sheen doesn't come out all that well with the extra fine nib. And then this is the most recent one that I finished. And this is a fountain pen. And I made a lot of mistakes on this one, it looks like. Like I said, some days are better than others. Oh no, it looks like I skipped a page. Oh no. Okay, so I'm gonna have to figure out what to do with that blank page there. I didn't even notice that I had skipped a page. Very interesting. Oh, so here's an example of where I have a footnote and it's not at the very end of the page. So I just put it right after where the footnote asterisk appears. But yeah, I was like, oh, that's not the end of the chapter. It's because I left that blank. What I might end up doing, actually, I think this is a good opportunity. I think what I'll do is I'll maybe do some rabbit illustrations on these pages since they're blank. Because that seems like a really good use of those pages. So there we are. That's the end. And then this is my Diplomat Arrow with a medium steel nib, the Sailor Shikiori Rikyucha ink. And this pen, even though it's a steel nib, it is a delight. It really is a delight to write with. It's so smooth and it just feels really, really good. Okay, and then it's all ready for the next chapter. So I think I will probably do... I probably won't do a whole chapter because that would take a while unless I sped up the video, which I could do. But I think part of it too is what I enjoy about it and what I'd like to share with you is sort of the slowing down to write. Because when I'm writing notes for something like work or home or whatever, I tend to write really super fast. My handwriting gets really, really messy. But here I really tried to slow down and, you know, just write slowly and think about what I'm writing and think about the letters and think about the story and all of that. So I think I will find an appropriate passage in the book. And when I get to that, I will and whatever pen and ink I'm using at that time, I will go ahead and film that so that you can all see that and enjoy. I'm not really a real fan of reading over that kind of thing, so I think what I might do is just make it silent and maybe like super silent so you can hear the pen on the paper and all of that. So some ASMR going on here. we can get that going, I think. So, so that's it. I put a pencil board in here because some of the pens were more comfortable to write with a pencil board behind. This one was not one of those pens, but I did find with the extra fine nib, it was a lot easier to write with the pencil board behind here and while writing. So that's why I have this in here, but I'm not using it for all of the chapters. And so, I mean, who knows what I'll end up doing with this when I'm done. Like I said, it's more for the enjoyment of actually doing it than actually having a transcribed version. Yeah, this has been happening a lot when the folio cover, because when I open this up, it kind of has to flatten out, so I flatten it, and then when I try to close it again, the front cover gets a little bit stuck in the folio, but it usually gets back into shape really easily. So that's it. I just wanted to share my new project with you. It's obviously going to take a really long time to get through the whole book. Although, you know, this is probably, have I been doing this for maybe 2-3 weeks now? Yeah, and I'm not doing it every day because I have tennis elbow, aka knitter's elbow. It's really not from tennis. I don't play tennis. I used to knit for hours on end, and since then my elbows have had some issues because I throw when I knit. If that doesn't mean anything to you, don't worry about it. I throw instead of knitting continental style, basically. And it really hurts my elbow. Like, it's basically a repetitive stress injury to the elbow. So if I write for too long, I end up aggravating that. So, but it's still enjoyable nonetheless. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little flip through there. And like I said, if you have not read Watership Down, run, don't walk, either to a bookstore or to your Kindle store, or, well, make sure you're safe and wearing a mask when you go to the bookstore if that's where you're going, or get it on Audible. I have a version on Audible, but I don't know who the narrator is. I can't remember. I think it's probably some British actor, which is right up my alley. I'd listen to that. But I highly recommend this book. It is truly wonderful. Although I must say that now that I'm going through this again, because this was originally written quite some time ago. What was the original date? Let's see. Let's see if I can find that in here. Let's see. Originally 1972. And this is from 1996, this version of the book. So 72, I don't know. I mean, there's some maybe, I don't want to say racially charged passages, but things that probably wouldn't be appropriate nowadays and probably weren't even appropriate in 72. So some of that makes me go, oh, yeah, it makes me cringe a little bit when I come across those things. And I think, why did you even say that or reference that? Because you're talking about a bunch of rabbits. Like, you don't need to reference these things. But anyway, so just beware that there's that in a little bit of racial insensitivity here and there in the book. And I'm not happy about that, not comfortable with that, but nonetheless, I still think this is an amazing book. And this is actually the first time that I've ever noticed those things in the book. Probably because, first off, just the environment we're listening to or in right now, where people are kind of hypersensitive to that kind of thing, including myself. But also, I think I just had never really stopped enough to pay attention to each and every word and each and every passage in the book. So there's that. But I did want to warn you about that, but I still think it's a lovely, lovely book. And at the end of the day, it's just a really awesome story about rabbits and their hardships and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's it for today, I promise. Feel free to like and or subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye.